Okay.
Oh, Joel, there you
Hey,
are.
Joel. Hello, my
Jack,
friend.
hi, Molly. How are you?
Hi. Well, nice to see you.
Nice to be here. Nice to see you both.
Good. Good. All right. Well, getting close to the countdown. I started the recording and really looking forward to this. I'm going to start muting folks just because. Da-da, da-da, da-da. Okay. And make sure I didn't mute Jack. I did not mute Jack. That's well. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. As most of you know, my name's Molly Gordon, and for about 2 years, I've been having what I call Wholeness Hangouts. Started to be called Hangouts because the original platform we used was Google Hangout. And the theme is the underlying wholeness and well-being at the core of our existence. And I have guests, various guests, teachers and practitioners from the Three Principles community usually. Sometimes we branch out. And this month, I'm delighted to have Dr. Jack Pransky. Most of you know, but Jack may be new to some of you. Jack is the founder of the Center for Inside Out Understanding. He is a Three Principles author, trainer, and practitioner. He's known as a coach of the coaches and a counselor of the counselors. This is not Jack's first rodeo. I first encountered Jack when I discovered his book, Modelo, about Dr. Roger Mills. Gosh. Dr. Roger Mills' work in Florida and in, I think it's Oakland, some of the most troubled communities in the country. And by troubled, I mean skyrocketing murder rates, drug addiction, really bad situations for people. And Roger went in and transformed these communities in a matter of a few years. And actually, the most notable thing was it didn't look like Roger transformed anything. Roger enabled the citizens, members of the community, to wake up themselves and recover their well-being, recover access to their own wisdom, and they transform their community. I went on to read several of Jack's other books. In the subtitle for this hangout, the theme for this hangout, Simple Wisdom for Living Well, is the subtitle from his book, Somebody Should Have Told Us. What else would you like people to know about you, Jack?
That's about it.
Okay.
Anything they want to know, I will tell.
All right, great. I have most of you muted just to cut down on background noise, but we really do want your questions and comments to be part of this. You can do that by chatting. If you mouse over, if you're on the computer and you mouse over the bottom of your screen, icons come up and you can chat. You can also click on an icon for participants. It will bring up a list of participants. And I believe at the bottom of that list, my screen's a little different because I'm the host, there's a place to raise your hand. And if you do that, I will see that you want to ask a question. So you can either chat or raise your hand, or you can go like this, and I'll probably see you. But please feel free to contribute because your voices, your questions are really important. So,
While you're reflecting, first I want to say hi to everybody out there, and secondly, I want to apologize in advance just in case I start coughing like a maniac, because I have been sick since the day I got back from Spain, and that was 5 days ago. Had a fever for 4 days and have just recovered. And I still have a lingering cough that sometimes shows up when I don't want it to. So that's what's happening. I haven't been sick since I was in the middle of my European tour in 2014. And I remember what it was like. It's not fun.
There's a reason you haven't been doing it regularly.
There's a reason. Yes.
Well, we really appreciate you being here, regardless of how you're feeling. And you know, that regardless of how you're feeling is actually something that's been kind of running through the back of my mind as I've been looking forward to this conversation. And it has to do with something that I certainly went through when I first encountered the principles, and that I have seen others go through as they encounter the principles. And that's at first, when I discovered the principles, I had this feeling of tremendous well-being, relief, and ease. Did we actually lose Jack?
I hope not, because I'm still here.
Oh, good. There you are. I just lost you on my screen. There's often a period of ease, of lightness, of realization of well-being, and then some other parts of the human experience kick in. We don't feel so great. Maybe we get scared about something, or insecure about something, or angry about something. And I know at that point, I went, okay, I'm missing something. Because if I understand the principles right, I'm never going to feel crappy again. Which I now know was a misunderstanding. But I wondered if that might be something you could speak to. Does that ring a chord with you?
Yeah, it does. Well, I think the thing that happens when we feel elated like that at first, what we don't notice is that we've stopped thinking the way that we were.
Mm.
And then suddenly we start thinking the way that we were. Again, without us really being aware of it. And so we go down the tubes again. But one thing that is very comforting for people who understand the three principles is that if they don't panic about it, and they just see that it's thought working with consciousness perfectly in action, and we're just here having experiences and making meaning of them, and it really doesn't matter that much what kind of experience we get if we know where it's coming from. And where it's coming from is always us. And when I know, speaking for myself, when I forget that I am the source of my experience, and when I think it's coming from out there, that's when I get in trouble. That's when I get trapped. Mm-hmm. You know, when I see reality instead of my own thinking at work, instead of creation of illusion, you know, then that's when I get trapped. We wouldn't be trapped if we didn't see reality.
Yeah. And it occurs to me that most of the people on this call, I think, are familiar with the three principles, but there will be people watching the replay in particular who may have been following me for a few years and thinking that someday they'll find out what the three principles are, but they haven't yet. So perhaps we can back up. What is it? What are the three principles? Let me put it that way.
Oh my goodness, am I going to be asked that?
I'm going to ask you that. Or maybe a different one. It's like the book is called Somebody Should Have Told Us. What is it that somebody should have told us?
Yeah, somebody should have told us that that our experience of life is created from the inside out, not from the outside in. When it really looks like it's created from the outside in. And the reason, excuse me, what am I saying? When it really looks like it's created from the outside in, but it's really created from the inside out. So the way that it looks to all of us as we grow up is not the truth. And in fact, in my last training, I was just coming out and calling it a lie. Some people didn't like that, but you know, it really puts it on the line when you see it as a lie. And what makes it a lie is that the outside world is always being filtered through what we are calling these three principles. And the three principles are just words. They're just form that is an attempt to point to something that's formless. Mm-hmm. Whenever people latch onto the form of them, they get into trouble. I know I did, and I can see it happening again and again with people. It's not what we're saying that the words mean. It's what they are pointing to beyond what we mean. We're just pointing. We're saying, see, this is the way it is, and there are no words to describe it. So there's this formless energy behind life. It's one, it's like all things in its perfection. And it's what makes us be alive. And that's a fact. You know, that there's something in us that makes us be alive, and it's the life force that's connected to the energy of all. And that's what is behind all life, and it is all life. And then out of that, we get these two other amazing gifts or powers that allow us to create our lives with. And it's the gift of consciousness and then the gift of thought. Our consciousness would always be pure if it weren't for what we come up with in our thinking. And we have this gift to come up with anything in our thinking. And what we come up with very often clouds the pure. And it clouds it at various levels. So we get a thought of, say, anger. Consciousness picks it up, makes it look and feel absolutely real. And that's what we're stuck with as long as we think it. And that's the simplicity of it. And if we weren't thinking it, we would just be with the experience of the pure. So that's why somewhere along the line, this phrase or sentence came to me out of nowhere that summed up the three principles to me in one sentence. And that is, all we are is peace, love, and wisdom, and the power to create the illusion that we're not. Mm. And that to me is the crux of it. And what it means we can reflect on for a lifetime. Mm.
Yeah, that's worth sitting with for a minute. I've seen that, read that, and heard you say that before, and every time it touches me.
I don't know where it came from. I didn't think it up. I can tell you that right now. It's
like
beyond me.
my cat's name. I named her Sophie, and I found myself calling her Scout. It's not as elevated an example, but
I say, is that the same thing? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. Probably not. Oh. So, as I said in the beginning, Jack, this isn't your first rodeo. You know, you've been around the principles for a long time. If I understand the chronology right, you started as a journalist. You discovered Modelo. Is that right?
Well.
Not really?
I was a prevention specialist.
That's right.
When I discovered Modelo.
Okay. What the heck is a prevention specialist?
At that time, I was working for the Office of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Programs in the state of Vermont. And I was what was called I think at that time I was responsible for a geographic area in Vermont, to try to create alcohol and drug prevention programs. But I had written a book about prevention, and I thought I knew what I was talking about. Discovered that I didn't after the book was published, or as it was about to be published.
Tough timing.
Yeah, but in a way, it's okay. Because I actually think that my book, Prevention and the Critical Need, is like a great book that describes outside-in prevention.
Okay.
And as far as describing outside-in prevention goes, it would be tough to find a better one. But why go there when there's something that I see now that takes the entire book and calls it all into question?
So from that perspective of prevention, what difference does it make to see experiences generated from the inside out versus the old outside in paradigm? How does that change prevention?
180 degrees. Well, first of all, so it's like, take alcohol and drug abuse, for example. What would make people abuse alcohol and other drugs? So in the outside in world, we come up with things like, if they had the right information, drugs are and what they do to you, and the problems that they create, then we'll do a lot better. And if people have skills, then they'll do a lot better. And if people have supports, then they'll do a lot better. And if people have healthy conditions created in the family, school, peer group, and the rest of the community, they'll do a lot better. And if the outer environment has fewer risk factors associated with it, we'll do a lot better. And if there's resilience built into, or protective factors built into the things that people do, people will do a lot better. And it's all from the outside in that people will do a lot better.
So we're managing external circumstances and factors.
Right. And what it leaves out of the picture is that no matter what we do in the name of all those things that I mentioned, people take them all in with their thinking. So, when the resiliency research came out, you know, it showed that even though, you know, a certain percentage of people are subjected to these risk factors, only a certain percentage of them will get involved in problems. Well, what happens with the rest of them, you know? But what that research, what the resiliency research didn't recognize is that even when, like, resiliency is built into the picture, some people will do well and other people won't. Now, why is that? It's because at the very core is people's thinking. And at the core of that is this spiritual essence we have that is perfection, that people would not be abusing anything, just being connected to the state that we are. So the only way people can abuse drugs or alcohol or anything else or commit violence or do all kinds of other things that are problems for oneself or the rest of the world is if we are not connected to that, to that which we are with our own thinking. I mean, we can't not be connected to it, but we can create the illusion that we're not connected to it. And that we do with our thinking, with our power of thought. And when people don't recognize that they are creating their own illusions out of which they then think, feel, and act, and when they don't realize that they are everything that they're looking for in life already, you know, those are two powerful things that if people realized, they wouldn't have to go in the directions that they're going in.
Mm-hmm. So you just recently came back from Spain, teaching or leading a retreat in Spain, and you've been teaching the principles and training others to teach and share the principles for a long time. And I'm curious, what have you noticed about what really helps people grok this?
Seeing the simplicity of it. It's what Sid was saying right from the beginning. We have made it so complicated. Especially at first, I think Sid used to tear his hair out by how complicated we were all making it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through the years, because of our mistakes, you know, we've learned the hard way, and now we're helping people to get closer to the essence of what it is that Sid was speaking to in the first place.
And for those who don't happen to know, Sid is Sydney Banks, whose awakening experience is the foundation of what we are calling the three principles. And so
I'm sorry. So like, for example, so in Spain, I was teaching with Gabriela Maldonado Montano. We were teaching cultivating the art of working with people one-on-one through the three principles, or something to that effect. And what I did was I put two things up on the board. Creation of illusion and essence and oneness. And everything that we're doing points to one of those two things. And so we keep pointing back. And however complicated we make it, it always comes down to those two things. I mean, you can call them something different.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes right down to it, it's one or the other or both that people have insights about that end up changing lives. And everything we do in one-on-one work with people, or anytime we attempt to teach this stuff to others, or whenever we're just talking about it informally, really, it comes down to pointing people in the direction of the simplicity of those two things. Call them whatever you want.
You know what? One of the things I was looking back on some of my notes from reading your work, and where is it? Oh, one of the things I had highlighted is it's not our thoughts that get us into trouble, it's our thoughts about our thoughts that get us into trouble.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. And it just occurred to me in the context of talking about and thinking about the three principles, that our thoughts about the three principles, our thoughts about how to teach three principles also can be what get us into trouble.
Yeah, it's interesting because a friend of mine who doesn't really know anything about the three principles, but is a very, very spiritual person. So she came to a talk about the three principles that was given by some of the people who had been through trainings of mine. And when she heard this talk, even though they really tried to go out of their way to show that these were spiritual facts as opposed to beliefs or ideas, this woman came out of there seeing them as beliefs or ideas.
Yes.
So that was very, very, very interesting to me. It's so easy for people to see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though we think we're being really, not careful, that's not the right word I want, but even though we're really going out of our way to portray and describe what it really is, it doesn't always come out that way to the hearer. Because the hearer is going to have it come out through their belief system.
Exactly.
And yet we're the ones who are talking. And how can we ensure that they are getting what we're pointing to? You know, very often we talk and never find out.
Exactly.
Unless somebody happens to have one of those major experiences where they don't see life in the same way again.
Mm-hmm.
And, then they'll tell us sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But, what are the other people walking away with? Walking away hearing. So it was very eye-opening to me to be the witness of that from the other side.
And what have you learned, if anything? I mean, I puzzle over this all the time, how to share or point to these insights in a way that points to the truth of them, the facticity of them, rather than something Sid says or Molly says or Jack says.
Yeah, because what Sid says, uh-oh, or Molly says or Jack says doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
The only thing, so what becomes more and more clear to me all the time is that we have to point people back inside themselves so that they see how it works within themselves.
Yeah.
I don't want people to take my word for it.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to take my word for it. I want people to look inside themselves and see if this is true. It's the only thing that counts.
Absolutely. No, that's really beautiful. It's not just beautiful. That gets us off the hook as teachers, but in a number of important ways. And it's the only thing that can create an enduring realization as opposed to passing on a good idea.
Yeah. If we just pass on a good idea, we're not doing our job.
Mm-hmm. I want to remind people, if you've got questions for Jack, please, 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 you can click on participants at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. You can use the chat to ask a question or to get our attention. And forgive me as my eyes bounce around the screen so I can be watching everything. But we definitely want to hear from you, your questions, your ideas, your experiences.
And please do that, because not only does it get Molly off the hook, but it's also really helpful for me.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, that didn't work.
No, shoot. Here we are.
Maybe everybody just knows everything already.
That could be. Could be.
Which actually is true.
Exactly.
We just don't know that we know it.
You know, I've realized over the couple of years of doing these that I often just fall into this place of just feeling good when I'm talking to you or somebody else I'm interviewing about this content and this understanding, and I just go blank. It's like, cool.
Joel has a question.
Yay, Joel! You can unmute yourself, my friend, or I've unmuted you. Whoops, I think we clicked at the same time. Go for it, Joel. Sorry about that.
There you go.
There we are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Like the AT&T guy. So in recent back and forth correspondence with Jack, I noticed that he talked about core beliefs. And I found it really fascinating, especially from sort of a principles lens versus what I might call garden variety psychology, talking about things like that. I'm wondering if you could maybe talk about that a little bit, about how core beliefs, sometimes they're stuck in our consciousness, affect us.
Yeah. First of all, Dickens suggested that I not use the term core beliefs anymore.
Oh, good.
and because when we talk about core, we're really meaning the core essence of ourselves. And if we say core beliefs, it kind of muddies the waters if we're using core, the word core, in those two ways. So I heard him, And then I tried to come up with an alternative word, and it was very difficult to come up with an alternative word.
Mm.
Because what we're talking about here is like a fundamental underlying belief that we have that lies behind a whole bunch of other beliefs that we carry around with us. So I think, well, I have this example in my book, and I think I did it on used it on some webinar somewhere, that where so maybe this may be familiar to some people if they heard that other webinar. But so one day I was at my my folks' summer beach house, and I was there all alone, and I was making a tuna casserole, which is one of the few things I can make. And when I was finished with it, and by the way, it was delicious. when I was finished with it, I set it on the counter next to the refrigerator to cool. And then I forgot about it, went about my business. And at night, when I was going up to go to bed, I was shutting off all the lights downstairs. And and then I remembered, when it was dark, I remembered that, I kind of sensed that I forgot to put something away. And so I went next to the refrigerator and I started to take the casserole dish and put it in the refrigerator. And all of a sudden, I felt these things crawling on me. I had no idea what it was. So I put the casserole dish down very gingerly, and I ran over to the light, turned the light on, and my entire casserole was full of ants. Now, so then I'm running on the beach the next morning, you know, after jumping around like a maniac and getting rid of these things. I realized that none of those ants would have been there if it hadn't been for the casserole dish. And it's just like these underlying fundamental beliefs that we carry around with us that we don't know we're having, that suddenly attract this enormous number of other thoughts that are surrounding them. Like, for example, if for some reason we feel like we think, I'm not good enough. You know, so we've come up with that about ourselves because of what our parents are, because we took whatever our parents said in that way, and we've come up with this belief about ourselves, about that. And all of a sudden, we've got all these other thoughts that arise from it. Where if that fundamental underlying belief wasn't there, all of those other thoughts wouldn't be there. So that's what I meant. And I'm not sure what else to say about it at the moment.
Without making it into a to-do or a method, is there some sort of benefit in doing a self-examination for such a underlying belief? Or when we find ourselves struggling, should we consider the fact that there may be such an underlying belief?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, Joel, because to me it's very simple. We're either seeing, like if we were to see essence and oneness across the board, we wouldn't ever need to go looking at our beliefs. We would just feel free because we've connected to the oneness of all things, are connected to our spiritual essence. All right? Now, short of that, if we don't, we could see thought as illusion across the board. No matter what we come up with, it's thought that looks like reality but is really an illusion that comes from our own creation. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter anything about the content. If we just see that across the board and it erases all of the issues or problems that we have, there's no need to go into specific beliefs. But if there's some things that, you know, like we could see it generally, but we can't see it in some specific ways because we all have blind spots. And if there's specific blind spots that we don't see that are connected to some of these fundamental beliefs, then it might be beneficial for people to be open to seeing what these fundamental beliefs are. So, for example, but to go looking for them with analysis, I would say is unhelpful.
Right.
What we could do instead is say, okay, I know I've got this thing that seems to be bugging me. It keeps coming up over and over and over again. I don't know what it is. I'd like to see the source of it. Okay, universe or universal mind or whatever, I'd love you to show me what it is. And then take it off our mind, forget about it, go about our business because we've set our intention to see it, and then see what comes. And sometime when we've forgotten all about it, something comes to us that helps us see it. So I don't know if that helps me. You know, different things help different people, but that's what helps me.
Yeah, that's really great because I've really been mulling this over since I first encountered that from you, and it seems to me that itself is almost worthy of a book. I mean, it looks like if somebody who is familiar with regular psychology was wanting an entree into knowing about the principles, that itself would allow somebody to pole vault over the classical psychology into something that would be really immediately useful for them. And you're just they have that point of recognition that, yes, we recognize that there are also these underlying beliefs, but rather than having to process them, if you just understand that thought itself is just creating all of your experience. I mean, the release it would give somebody who's grappling with these core beliefs from other modalities.
Yeah, and we probably all know people who have gone to traditional psychologists for years and years and years and years, trying to get down to what these things are. And yet they have not been able to be free of them.
Yeah.
And somehow, for whatever reasons that I can't understand, somebody sees, oh, it's just an illusion of my creation. Whoa, what I've thought was reality all these years, I'm making up. Whoa. And suddenly, the whole picture just goes whoosh. And everything changes across the board because there's this enormous change of thought is what it is. You know, now we're getting a thought at a much higher level of consciousness where we're seeing what we called our problems before that were so real to us, and now we're seeing that they're only creations of illusion. I mean, wow. Changes everything. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joel.
Thank you.
Anne, I see you have a question, and you are unmuted, my friend.
Thank you. How does this relate to feelings? Because like yesterday was one of those days where I'm in that space and everything is fine, nothing touches me, I float through life. And then today I wake up wanting to curl up and not be here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, that's the story of life, you know. And
so going to my essence doesn't do it.
well, if we truly were able to go to our essence, it would do it. And you know, and since we really are our essence, we just get lost in the forgetting that we are. We get so lost in what makes us forget we are that we are no longer connected to what we truly are.
Well, that's how I lose the connection, because I don't know how I lose the connection, because when I go to bed that night, you know I'm going to always be there, and it just blows my mind when I wake up for no reason, not there.
Yeah, me too. I just, you know, it really surprises me sometimes.
Totally.
But I know enough now that I don't have to get bent out of shape about it. You know, it's just, I don't have to get frightened by the fact that I'm not there. Because it's just the three principles working perfectly. Whatever I think is what I'm going to experience. And as long as I know it's coming from me, it doesn't matter how low I get or how long I'm low or anything like that, because as soon as I wake up to it, I'm going to be back in my health. So I don't, you know, it's not like I can, it's not like, it's almost like why is the wrong question.
Yeah.
You know, why do we go there? It's kind of like the wrong question because it doesn't really get us anywhere. The right question is, how is what's going on related to the three principles?
I go to, how can I love myself here? Because to me, the essence of is love.
And see, the beauty of that is when we have that thought, we're love. And as Sid used to keep saying, you know, love is something that you can't give away. But you can't get rid of it because when you give it away, you get it back. So it's a gift that keeps on giving, you could say. And when our thinking is aligned with love, that's how it works perfectly, is that we get love back in the form of that feeling. And when our thinking is aligned with fear, we get that back in all its different forms, aligned with our thinking. And it's only because we've forgotten that at our essence, we are truly love. And the thinking goes by so fast that we don't see it as thinking and we're just left with the feeling of it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, because of what we know about the three principles, we know that it's thought. Like we're not going to get tricked for too long. We'll get tricked for a little while, but not for too long. I mean, I get tricked more regularly than I would like to, but I eventually catch on again. And I don't have to get worried about it. You know, it's like, so what? So what if I drop? I'm just having another experience of life. So we could, like if we had a thought, oh, I could just appreciate all the different experiences of life I'm getting, even if it's fear, then even that creates a little separation from the fear. Did that make sense?
Yeah, that's kind of like playing the like game. Just look at all the things you like.
Well,
That's appreciate.
like, the only problem I can see with that is that if we're bummed out and somebody comes along and tells us, well, just look at all the things you like, you know, just look at all the things there are to appreciate, and our thinking does not support that, we're going to have an awful hard time thinking our way to it.
Got it. Yeah, that's true.
So the idea is to know, for me anyway, that one of the most helpful things to me, and I know some people in the three principles world don't even talk about levels of consciousness anymore. To me, it's a critically important part of the picture, is that whatever situation we encounter in life, whatever other person we encounter in life, whatever circumstances we encounter in life, we have the opportunity to see it at all these different levels of consciousness. And it's a vertical understanding. You know, events happen to us on a horizontal level. This thing happens here, then this happens, then this happens, and this happens. Every single one of those things has a vertical line attached to it that has all these different possible levels. We could see anything from all these different possible levels. We're stuck, let's say we have an experience of fear, we're stuck looking out at a particular level. But if we realize, wait a minute, this is only one possible level of all the levels that we could see, that automatically lifts us to a higher level. So we're not trying to think our way to a higher level. We're just recognizing the fact of all levels.
Kind of like asking what else is possible.
Just knowing that all else is possible.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And seeing that all else is possible, even though we can't see it right now, is enough to lift us.
That helps.
Great. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Yeah, I find that my motives to manage my experience can be really sneaky sometimes. And whenever I discover that I've been trying to manage or manipulate or correct my experience, that a good deal of the discomfort that I'm experiencing, that I'm trying to manage, manipulate, or work my way out of, is caused by my judgment about my experience. And the more I can just relax and go for the ride, it's fascinating to me because it doesn't change the immediate discomfort of what I'm calling the ride, but that discomfort is nothing compared to the discomfort I layer on top of it by worrying about it. So for me, the classic example in my life is that very often in my life, I have awakened in the morning with this heavy feeling. And for most of my life, I thought that was a problem. And there was even a period in my life where I tracked that and evaluated how I was doing based on that. And in recent years, I've come to see that it just doesn't really need to mean anything. Mm. And it's so interesting to me that waking up in the morning with a heavy feeling, noticing it, not liking it, and then not worrying about it, it's often gone by the time I get to the bathroom 17 steps away. Mm-hmm. And that really made an impression on me. So much so that eventually I got comfortable with heavy feelings that didn't happen to lift in 17 steps, because they don't always. Right. So Anne, when you shared that question, can I love myself even here? I think that's a lovely question. And for me, when I ask that, I have to notice whether or not I'm expecting loving myself to feel a certain way. Like, can I love myself no matter how I feel here?
I had a situation this morning before I got on this call where I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone who she got divorced from her now ex-husband, and he is holding everything hostage. Mm. Okay, so she is, and it's like he wants her to, even though he can't get away with not giving her anything, he's trying not to give her anything so that she will end up spending all her money on legal fees. And she, this is just the way he is, his thinking is totally messed up. Okay. Now he's doing all that. She is like horribly distraught about it. But here's what's happening. It's not only the situation, like the situation is bad enough in and of itself, but then she layers on top of it her own worry, fear, terror even about what this means for her life, future, and all of that is layered on top of the bad enough situation as it is, making it twice as bad, 3 times as bad, 4 times as bad, so that she ends up using that as an excuse to be in a depressed state. Whereas if she realized, and I'm not saying this is the way to see it, but I'm just saying this is one possible levels. If she saw, okay, this is just an unfortunate experience. All right? I'm just going to ride it out and see what happens. She would not need, the same thing would be happening. She would do whatever she's got to do to protect herself, but whatever she has to do to protect herself doesn't have anything to do with the feeling that she is living with. Because she could do what she needs to do to protect herself with an okay feeling, or she could do whatever she needs to do to protect herself with a horrible, depressed, fearful feeling. Who's in control of that? Like, it's not that other guy. That other guy doesn't have that power over her. Only she has that power over her. So inadvertently, without realizing it, we make what are difficult situations much, much harder for ourselves a lot of times. And who decides that they're difficult situations in the first place? We do with our own thinking. They're just situations. They're just situations happening out there, and we, with our own thinking, we decide, this is horrible, this is difficult. You know, of course it seems that way because most of our thinking goes in that direction. You know, but it's really us doing it to ourselves. It's very humbling.
Very. We got two really good questions that came in just as we started to run out of time. So I just want to acknowledge Michael, who sent me a question, and also Wim, and we are out of time. I don't know what your time frame is, Jack.
Well, I mean, if these two questions came in, and I mean, I don't know how your situation works with the ending timing of the webinar, but I'm willing to.
Okay, I'm flexible. Today I happen to be flexible. So thank you very much. Michael's question is, can you ask Jack about listening from the I don't know place? And perhaps more importantly, how to take or keep a conversation client in the I don't know place.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
All of our listening, if we are going to be helpful to people, all of our listening needs to be from an I don't know place. Because as soon as we know something, we stop listening and we start listening to ourselves. We start listening to what we know, and automatically we are off listening. There are a number of things that get in the way of being able to just listen the way I call it, like an empty vessel. We are just an empty vessel being with people. There is no us in the picture. There's no ego in the picture. We're just this empty vessel, listening, taking in. And if we get any thought about ourselves, we are no longer an empty vessel or in I don't know mode. We know something. And knowing something is our biggest barrier to being able to help somebody. There was a second part to that question.
How do you take or keep a conversation with a client in the I don't know place?
Well, this is one of the things we were going over in the workshop I was talking about. Mm-hmm. It's like, for me, if I could describe it, it's like I'm in, I don't know, ask a question, I don't know, probe, I don't know, I have no idea where I'm going, I don't know, ask a question, whatever comes to me, because I don't know where I'm going, and then all of a sudden, boom, I get hit with something. So that's what the conversation looks like. You know, if you were looking at a session that I was doing with somebody, you would say, where is he going? I have no idea where I'm going until I know. So I'm just exploring. That's what the conversation is. Exploring together in I don't know land until wisdom speaks and I know something. And that's the only time that I want to say anything. Everybody's got their own styles, but that's me. And I find that when I caught on to that, I got a lot more effective with people. Took me a long time to catch on to that. All right, well, I hope I answered that question well enough. Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And Michael, feel free to text a follow-up if that wasn't, if you have a follow-up. But Wim asked, could you speak to advising people to go on a healthy diet? For example, get rid of gluten, versus only helping people see the three principles. Are three principles practitioners not often doing people a disservice by only helping them see the principles instead of offering them a holistic approach of well-being, spiritual, psychological, physical?
Well, that's an interesting question, Wim. I mean, I can just speak to the way I see it. The way I see it is there's physical stuff going on and there's thought. And, or I should say, thought, consciousness, and mind. So I personally had the thought, so a healer told me that it would help me immeasurably if I were gluten-free. Now, it doesn't matter what the guy said. I had to have the thought. I didn't want to. I was dragged kicking and screaming into the gluten world, but I was getting headaches. I was very mucousy. My stomach was not that great. And it was like, okay, if that's what this guy says, I'll try it, see what happens. All of a sudden, my headaches went away. My mucus went away. My stomach issues went away. And so like all of a sudden, it's like, whoa. As good as gluten tastes, gluten is like great stuff. I love it. But is it worth it? Is it worth it to me? Now, every once in a while, it'll be worth it to me. To, like, if I happen to have this thing for carrot cake, so if a piece of carrot cake gets stuck in front of my face and it's not gluten-free carrot cake, I might eat it, knowing I'm going to suffer. But it'll be worth it to me. All right? But as long as I know that, then I'm fine. So the answer to your question, Wim, is I think that that there are things that people who know about the physical can make suggestions if they see that in terms of what they know. As long as we know that that other person has to take it in with their own thinking. So like that healer could have said that to 20 people, and only 2 of us might have heard that we want to try it. But if people don't know about the physical and don't know about a holistic approach and don't live their lives like that themselves, then they have no business talking about it. People can only talk about what they know to be true. So, yeah, if you know about that and you think it would be helpful to somebody, then fine. You know, if I saw people with the same symptoms that I had, I might say, whoa, this is what happened to me. But that's different than talking about our experience of life. And I think both things are, the physical is important in this physical world of form. There's no denying that. And then there's thought, and how we're connected to the essence of all things. That's formless. And in the formless world, sometimes miracles have happened, even in the physical world. I don't know how to make them happen, but I've seen it with my own eyes. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the way I personally, Jack Pransky, sees it. Which doesn't mean anything.
The world according to Jack.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for hanging out and answering those two questions, Jack, and for being here. How can people find you? Where can people find you if they want more of what you have to offer?
Yeah, my website is www.insideoutunderstanding.com.
Great.
And since it used to be healthrealized.com, that still works to get people there too.
Okay. And Jack has written a number of excellent books. They're listed both on this event page and they're in Jack's website. So I strongly...
And by the way, first of all, Joel is holding up one that is very little known, you could say. And I also want to say that Joel is editing for me my latest book, which is called Seduced by Consciousness.
Ooh.
I thought it was going to be out by now, but there's been a little delay. And, sometime in the first part of the new year, it will very likely come out.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. Lovely. And give us a glimpse. What's Seduced by Consciousness? What's the theme?
It's like thought in itself would make no difference to us whatsoever if it weren't for consciousness. Consciousness makes it feel so real for people that they can't let it go. Mm-hmm. So we get seduced by our thinking, but it's our consciousness that really makes it feel as it does. So that's why I call the book Seduced by Consciousness.
Consciousness brings the negligee.
Whoa, you think about that.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to that. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And I'll be announcing the next Hangout shortly. It'll be sometime in January. We're going to play with the date and time, so I don't know what day and time it will be. And once again, Jack, thanks so much, and I wish you continued recovery from the cold.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.